In the highlands of East Africa, where morning light breaks across jagged mountain ridges and the air carries the scent of ancient incense and wind-sung hymns, the land seems to whisper secrets older than empires. Here, in a place where time is carved into stone and the sacred pulses beneath every monastery wall, Ethiopia guards one of the most extraordinary treasures in human history. A treasure not measured in gold or silver, but in words. Words written in an ancient script. Words forgotten by the world but protected by a civilization whose faith refused to shrink or bend. For more than 1,000 years, while the Western world believed the biblical canon was sealed, final and complete, there existed a kingdom that held tight to a far broader vision of Scripture. A kingdom where the Bible was not a trim selection of accepted books, but a vast library echoing with the voices of prophets, angels, patriarchs, and mystics long erased from the Western story. Long before modern debates about Apocrypha or lost Gospels, Ethiopia already possessed a rich and expansive scriptural heritage, preserved through its sacred language Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic tongue whose letters are etched onto parchment like sacred flames. These manuscripts, copied patiently by monk scribes who considered every stroke an act of devotion, became the vault through which the earliest Jewish and Christian writings traveled unaltered into the modern world. While the Roman and Byzantine churches narrowed their canons for political unity or doctrinal control, Ethiopia stood apart, safeguarding texts that others deemed dangerous, controversial, or unnecessary. And so, in this isolated kingdom atop the roof of Africa, 5 remarkable books survived that fundamentally changed the way we understand Genesis, angelology, the fall of humanity, the boundaries of history, and the structure of the universe itself. The journey into these forgotten writings begins in the heart of Ethiopia's spiritual geography. Lalibela, the city of rock-hewn churches that stand like monolithic prayers carved downward from the earth. It continues northward to Aksum, the ancient seat of the Ethiopian Empire, whose legends intertwine with the Queen of Sheba, the Ark of the Covenant, and some of the earliest Christian communities on earth. It is here, in this world of stone churches, illuminated manuscripts, and centuries-old chants, that the true story of Ethiopia's lost Bibles unfolds. The story does not begin with the writings themselves, however, but with the unique historical circumstance that allowed them to endure. When King Ezana declared Christianity the official religion of the Aksumite Empire in the 4th century, one of the earliest national conversions in world history, Ethiopia became a Christian kingdom not influenced by Rome's evolving political theology, nor by the later schisms that fractured Europe. Instead, its Christianity was rooted in Semitic traditions, drawing heavily from ancient Jewish practices preserved among Ethiopian Jews and early Christian communities. Ge'ez became the language not only of scripture, but of theology, philosophy, and liturgy, creating a self-contained world of sacred scholarship. Dr. Ephraim Isaac, one of the foremost scholars of Semitic languages and Ethiopian history, famously observed that Ethiopia's isolation was a blessing in disguise. While other nations debated which texts were authentic or doctrinally safe, Ethiopia simply kept them all. The Ge'ez canon swelled to 81 books, by far the largest Christian canon in the world, containing works that disappeared completely from Europe for more than a millennium. Among these stand 5 extraordinary texts. They are the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Adam and Eve, the Book of the Deeds of Alexander, and the Book of the Mystery. Each of these books reveals a chapter of ancient belief that was nearly erased from history. Each one survived because Ethiopian monks, far from the political pressures of European councils, continued copying them as essential components of the Christian story. Together they form a forgotten spiritual cosmos, a universe filled with angels and giants, primordial conflicts, cosmic maps, and eschatological prophecies. Our journey naturally begins with the book whose rediscovery shook the modern world, the Book of Enoch. For centuries, it was known only from brief quotations in early Christian writings and a passing reference in the New Testament letter of Jude, which directly cites Enoch's prophecy about the coming judgment. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones. But the full text had vanished, presumed forever lost. Scholars believe the early church had suppressed it because it presented a cosmology and angelology far too radical, too supernatural for later orthodoxy. Enoch tells the story behind the cryptic verses of Genesis 6, where the sons of God took daughters of men and produced a race of giants. It gives these angels names like Semyaza and Azazel, describes their descent onto Mount Hermon, and paints a vivid picture of how they corrupted humanity by teaching forbidden knowledge, sharpening weapons, forging armor, practicing sorcery, and adorning the face with cosmetics intended to seduce and manipulate. It is a book filled with cosmic journeys, heavenly courts, and prophecies of the final judgment, where the fallen angels are condemned for their rebellion, but the Western world lost it entirely. Then in 1773, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce returned from Ethiopia with 3 complete Ge'ez manuscripts of the Book of Enoch. Scholars in Europe initially scoffed, assuming the texts were fabrications. But in 1821, Richard Lawrence produced the first English translation, followed by the monumental work of R.H. Charles in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Even then, skeptics remained, until the mid-20th century, when the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls revealed 10 ancient Aramaic fragments of Enoch, proving beyond doubt that the Ethiopian Ge'ez version was not a late invention, but the most complete surviving version of an ancient Jewish masterpiece. It was Ethiopia, not Europe, that had preserved Enoch for 2,000 years. Closely tied to Enoch is the Book of Jubilees, often called Lesser Genesis, a text that retells the story of creation, the patriarchs, and the early commandments through the voice of an angel speaking to Moses. Jubilees organizes the entire span of biblical history into periods of 49 years, Jubilees, and insists that the proper calendar of God is a 364-day solar calendar, not the lunar-based systems used later. This calendar system, discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, confirmed that Jubilees was once a deeply influential text in Jewish theology. It goes into astonishing detail, naming Adam and Eve's daughters, describing the creation of angels on the first day, assigning heavenly significance to agricultural cycles, and insisting that Abraham, Noah, and the earliest patriarchs already kept the laws that would later be given to Moses. Like Enoch, Jubilees vanished from the Western world until the 19th century, but it remained intact in Ethiopia. Scholars such as August Dillman and James Vanderkam produced authoritative translations from its Ge'ez sources, revealing a theological world where cosmic time, law, and creation are intricately bound. As the story of these surviving texts unfolds, it leads us deeper into the narrative arc of human origins. The Book of Adam and Eve, known in Ethiopia as the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, extends the story beyond Eden's gates. It portrays Adam and Eve not as abstract theological figures, but as grieving parents, suffering souls, and spiritual warriors battling despair and demonic deception in a harsh, unfamiliar world. Unlike the terse biblical account, this book speaks with raw emotion. Adam and Eve cry out in regret, fast for long periods, attempt to regain divine favor, and face the relentless hostility of Satan, who seeks to destroy the newly formed human race out of jealousy. He deceives them with illusionary rivers, false promises, and frightening transformations. He tries to kill them, appearing as an angel of light, then as beasts, then as soldiers. This work, found in multiple early languages but most complete in Ge'ez, survives today largely because Ethiopian monks continue to copy it as a foundational narrative of human spiritual struggle. Yet Ethiopia's canon extends beyond strictly biblical narratives. The Book of the Deeds of Alexander presents a Christianized retelling of the life of Alexander the Great, recasting him as a righteous king guided by divine purpose. While ancient Greek and Persian sources portray Alexander as a conqueror hungry for empire, the Ethiopian text transforms him into a prophetic figure, a defender of the faith, and an instrument in God's cosmic plan. Uniquely, the Ethiopian version also contains passages that describe strange beings encountered at the edges of the world. Creatures not merely monstrous or symbolic, but depicted with an otherworldly intelligence and form. Though framed in medieval cosmological language, these accounts have led some modern readers to interpret them as early descriptions of extraterrestrial beings. In the narrative, Alexander consults heavenly messengers about these entities, questioning whether they are part of God's creation or intrusions from realms beyond the known cosmos. The most dramatic moment comes near the end of his journey, when Alexander reaches the outer boundaries of the world, lands so desolate and anomalous that the nations dwelling there represent chaos itself. In this apocalyptic landscape, he builds a massive iron gate between two mountains, sealing in not only the armies of Gog and Magog, but also these strange, otherworldly beings, imprisoning them until the final days. This imagery, echoed in the Quranic story of Dhul-Qarnayn and in medieval apocalyptic literature, became a central motif in Ethiopian eschatology, shaping how future generations understood the end times. And then there is the most enigmatic of all the texts, the Book of the Mystery. If Enoch explores the fall of angels and Jubilees maps the timeline of creation, the Book of the Mystery attempts something far more audacious. It describes the architecture of the universe itself. Written in dense, symbolic, often poetic language, it reveals the 9 ranks of angels, the structure of the heavens, the cosmic order of stars and planets, and the spiritual forces that fill the universe. This text does not speak of extraterrestrial beings in the modern physical sense, but it presents a world where countless spiritual intelligences, luminaries, archangels, seraphim, watchers, move and interact in a cosmic symphony. Though rarely translated and scarcely known outside academic circles, it is considered one of Ethiopia's great mystical works, a window into a worldview where science, spirituality, and cosmology intertwine seamlessly. Yet these books did not arrive in the modern world without cost. Many Ethiopian manuscripts, including sacred texts, were taken during the 19th century British expedition to Magdala. Thousands of books, crowns, and relics were transported to European libraries and museums, leaving deep wounds in Ethiopian cultural memory. Today, the British Library, the Bodleian Library, and the Vatican Library house some of these manuscripts. Others remain in Ethiopia, preserved in cliff-top monasteries accessible only by rope, in the ancient libraries of Aksum, or in the National Archives in Addis Ababa. Scholars like Dr. Michael Knibb emphasize that these texts are not merely curiosities. They are essential keys to reconstructing the religious world of early Judaism and Christianity. Without Ethiopia, vast pieces of ancient belief would be forever lost. Now, as modern readers rediscover these writings, their relevance becomes clear. The Book of Enoch reshapes the origins of evil, the nature of angels, and the cosmic significance of the flood. Jubilees clarifies early Jewish chronology and beliefs about the law. The Book of Adam and Eve illuminates the raw human experience of life after Eden. The Deeds of Alexander challenges how we interpret the relationship between history and myth. And the Book of the Mystery opens a door into a universe far more complex and populated than the simplified cosmology of later Western tradition. As the sun sets over the Ethiopian highlands, the ancient light of this civilization continues to cast its glow over the deepest questions of human existence. The 5 forgotten books it preserved are more than old manuscripts. They are windows into a world where heaven and earth, angels and humans, time and eternity are woven together in ways we are only now beginning to understand. And the question remains, now that the vault is open and the forgotten texts have returned to the world's attention, which of them, if any, should be restored to the biblical canon? The conversation has only begun.